Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another The Path to a New Edition. Because it's that time of the month, and Wizards of the Coast have brought out a new Unearthed Arcana. This time it's Player's Handbook Playtest 6. So they've kind of changed the naming scheme again. I wish they'd stick to something and make naming my videos a lot more easy. But anyway, they brought out a new one. Now, I'm going to try being a lot more quicker with this one, because I have been a bit rambly in the past. And to summarise this one, it's 77 pages long. They've put in 7 new versions of the classes. They're revisiting the classes they've already done to try and introduce further changes they've made, like the weapon mastery ability, applying that to more classes. But they're supposedly taking in feedback now. Now, I don't see it as that at all. I see this as very much a return to the old D&D Next playtest packages back in 2012, on the lead up to 5th edition. What they're doing here is they're throwing out new ideas and seeing what sticks. And I like that. That's brilliant. Let's try lots of different iterations of Dungeons & Dragons with new rules and see what's interesting in there. But, to tell the truth, in this playtest package, I am not impressed. There's not a lot in here which interests me. So, to start, we start off at the Bard. Now, we're right into a change here, invoking magic through music, dance, and verse. So they're introducing the idea of, as well as being able to be storytellers, as well as being musicians, they can also be dancers. And I can see what they're going for here. If you think of sort of tribal cultures where everybody's dancing together, the magic of that is part of a bard. A bard fits that quite well. It's a different interpretation. Now, they seem to have made this more into a combat version of the bard, which I'm not terribly keen on. And the next paragraph really quite annoys me. Bards believe that the creators of the multiverse spoke and signed it into existence, and that remnants of those words of creation still resound and glimmer on every plane of existence. Magic of the Bards is an attempt to harness those words and direct them to create new wonders. So, bards are now a religion? They all believe that the universe was created in the same way? That God spoke it up? I'm not sure I'm keen on that at all. Bards should be free to be religious if they want. It shouldn't be built into the character class. They've even made moves through more recent versions of Dungeons & Dragons to make very religious character classes less religious. So paladins, for example, don't have to follow a god. But now they're making bards into following this weird religion thing. Now, one of the major changes as we go through is they've changed the cutting words into just a spell. So bards could make an attack where they would say something, your mum dresses you funny, is one of my favourite ones, and that would do psychic damage, and it would put the enemy at disadvantage. Well, they've upped the damage of that, but to tell the truth, I don't see why. Because the d4 damage was always fine, because the big advantage of it was the disadvantage. I've been playing a bard fairly recently, and we went up against a dragon, and the fact that every round I could put that dragon at disadvantage for its attacks by using cutting words over and over again was fantastic. Even though I was only doing a d4 damage every time, the fact that everybody else could make far better attacks against it meant that my bard was in very much a support role, which is kind of what bards are supposed to be. So we go through, and they've been fiddling things around again. There's not many changes in here. We've got the College of Dance. One of their abilities is Bardic Damage. They can use Dexterity instead of Strength for attack rolls, and they use their Bardic Inspiration die plus Dexterity for damage. So bards are great at hitting things now, or dancing bards? I don't get that. They've got various abilities. As I said, I'm going to skip through it. Then we've got Clerics. Well, again, Clerics, they're just slightly messed around. They've changed things here and there. There's not many big changes to the Clerics at all. Going through all of those. What have we got here? War Domain. Then we've got the Druids. Well, the Druids, they've changed the wild shape again. Now, I don't mind this change. Once again, instead of having these weird forms that they introduced in the last one, you're just choosing an animal type. And if we search for the wild shape here, so you have a number of known forms now. So at second level, you can only know 3 forms. So perhaps you know wolf, bear, rat. And you can change those during long rests as you think about another type of animal and swap them out. But between those long rests, you're stuck with those 3 forms. And that goes up to 4 at 4th level and 5 at 8th level. The other big change of Wild's shape, which I like, is game statistics are replaced by the statistics of the beast, but you retain your hit points, hit dice, intelligence, wisdom, and charisma scores. So you're keeping your hit dice. So if you change into an animal when you're at 3 hit points, you're an animal with 3 hit points. If you change into an animal when you're fully healed, you're an animal fully healed. Now, they've got the strange thing that if you lose the hit points of the animal, so you change into a rat and it only has, let's say, 10 hit points, and your character has 60 hit points. When you take 10 hit points damage, you have a chance of changing back into your normal form. But you've taken those 10 hit points of damage. You can resist it now to try and hang in that form longer, but generally you are using those hit points as the judge of when that form's taken too much damage. I think it's a nice idea, and it gets rid of the idea of druids doubling up their hit points. It's one of the things I haven't liked of druids in the recent years, that druids aren't the magical users of nature that they used to be. They are now shapeshifters. Anyway, we carry on through those. There's not much else change. It's mainly the wild shape. We've got combat wild shape, which includes temporary hit points. So the Circle of the Moon druids have a better version of their wild shape, more in line with the version in 5th edition at the moment. Monks, there are some minor changes in. They have changed their key points to be discipline points now. A name change, I don't see what the point is. I guess they're trying to make monks more generic. And there's an ability to upgrade their deflect missiles to be able to deflect magic. If a spell uses an attack roll, so not magic missile, but most other attack spells, the monk can now deflect it and channel it back at the person who cast it, which is a really quite an interesting idea. We've got the different types of monk. Paladins, there's been the change to the Divine Smite. So Divine Smite at the moment is a spell-like ability that you trade in a spell slot for. Well, now it's just a spell which you've always got memorized, so you can always use a spell slot to catch it. Now, Divine Smite, like the other smites, have a casting time of bonus action, so they're not free to cast like in 5th edition. They're like the last version of the Paladin, where you're using your bonus action to cast it instead. They've added the weapon mastery, as I said, so all the sort of combat types now get weapon mastery, which still isn't very interesting. It's feats, but for the weapon rather than the wielder. One of the problems with changing things like Divine Smite into spells is the fact that other people can get it. Now, while Divine Smite itself remains a paladin spell, so only somebody who gets access to all spells outside paladin could learn it. So things like bards, for example, who get the ability to take a spell from a different class at certain levels, they could take the paladin spells. And I believe warlocks can do the same. Oh, I'd missed on bards that the bard spell list is now gone completely. Bards get to choose whether they're using divine magic, primal magic, or what's it called? Wizardly magic, whatever that's called. And that's the spell list they use now instead of having a separate bard one. That they are either a wizard light, a cleric light, or a druid light. But they can steal spells from other things. Warlocks have the ability to take spells from other lists. So the smite spells are accessible to everybody, including a bunch of the lesser smite spells, which are just on the divine spell list now. So clerics can kind of be better paladins than paladins. because they will have a longer spell list, access to more spells, to be able to do far more smites. Okay, they're restricted into which ones they can use, but they can cast far more. That's one of the things I hate about making everything spells, that you're making everybody very generic and allowing people to steal from other classes. If I'm playing a paladin, I want those smite abilities, and that's my unique class feature. But it's not anymore. Carrying on through, there's not a lot else in there. Rangers, again, they've sort of fiddled around with. Mainly they're bringing in the subclasses. There are multiple subclasses now, allowing lots of other abilities. We've got rogues. Again, not massive changes here. Very slight ones here and there. Nothing I feel really that interesting. Again, more subclasses. We've got the assassin there. Now on to the spell lists. Well, as I said, certain spell lists have changed. Oh, can I remember the spell list? Arcane. So Arcane, Divine, and Primal are the three types of spells that spell lists that Bards can get access to now. We've got the Smite spells, so that says it's Paladin. But if we carry on through, Staggering Smite, Thunderous Smite, Searing Smite is just Divine, so any Cleric or Divine Magic user, a Bard can use it. They don't get access to as many, they can't swap it out like a Paladin does, but if they memorize it, they can use Smites. We've got feats. Again, those are slightly modified. We've got the fighting styles, the weapons, along with the different types of weapon mastery, and the weapon mastery properties, which don't appear to have changed, and various equipment, which are very slightly changed, but not much. The heroic advantage is back to as written in the book, that Games Masters hand it out, and you can use it to gain advantage on a roll. There's nothing very interesting going on there. And the attitude changes, different conditions, short rests are back to normal, telepathy, teleportation, tremor sense, true sight, unarmed strike, and unconscious. So they are fiddling at the edges of things here and introducing some interesting ideas, but I'm afraid this time I don't think they particularly work. Well, I said I was going to try and keep this shorter, so hopefully this is short enough. I hope I haven't missed out too much. I could have gone through it page by page and there were lots more interesting things, but as usual, I think I've whittled on for long enough. So, thank you very much for watching, and as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.